Hello, my name is Tolg and I exist, therefore I think too much. I changed the camera angle because without direct conversation, I have no idea how to assume what message means what, but I got bright shined in the windows, so I assume I'm annoying the neighbors. These houses in this area that I live in, side note, are like 100 years old. And I think it has something to do with that and the architecture, and then having to put in, you know, maybe not all of them are 100 years old, but this one is. Having to put in air ducts after they're built. Something, I don't know, but the acoustics make it so that in certain areas of the house, the sound travels between houses in the neighborhood. So, this area can hear the neighbors across the street and vice versa, but only if they're in a specific area of their house. And I think they hear me more than I hear them. So, I changed the camera angle. Don't think it's gonna help anything, but it might. I don't know. Anyways, I am Tolg. I exist, therefore I think too much. I don't know if I already said that. And I'm going to read Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche. I am reading very slowly because I rant. Hence the Philosopherants playlist that I made. And due to ranting, I cuss. And I don't have to care if you don't like it, because I am not yet getting paid. Maybe one day I will care, but it is not today. So if you don't like cussing, go away. Yep, doodles. I think I am on... Okay, I'm on point 20, so I'll probably just do point 20 and 21. Like I said, I'm going very slowly. So point 20, none of that sounded like it was English. Point 20. I don't know why. My brain's not okay. Point 20, that the separate philosophical ideas are not anything optional or autonomously evolving. Okay, we're just diving right into it. There was nothing introducing what the fuck this is about. But grow up in connection and relationship with each other. I mean, if philosophy is built as a means of understanding life, you would have to assume that all philosophical ideation or ideas would somehow web-wise be connected with one another, be relevant. Not relevant. Is it relevant? Would at least somehow relate, like we're all 7 people away from Kevin Spacey. Something like that. All philosophical ideas are 7 ideas away from each other, one another. Then he goes on and he says, however suddenly and arbitrarily they seem to appear in the history of thought, they nevertheless belong just as much to a system as the collective members of the fauna of a continent. Okay, so I think we agree. Is betrayed in the end by the circumstance. Oh, wait, we don't. How unfailingly the most diverse philosophers always fill in again a definite fundamental scheme of possible philosophies. Oh. Again, we get to the point of everybody needs to make a paycheck. So even if you're trying to understand life, you still need to be able to, outfit your table with food for your family. And if you can't come up with, a quandary of life, make one up, as that's your profession. Under an invisible spell, they always revolve once more in the same orbit. However independent of each other they may feel themselves with their critical or systematic wills, something within them leads them, something impels them in definite order, the one after the other, to wit, the innate methodology and relationship of their ideas. Is he just saying that they have a tendency to redundantly say the same thing over and over again? Their thinking is, in fact, far less a discovery than a recognizing, a remembering. Oh, that's forgiving if that's what he was actually saying, is that everybody's redundant. It wouldn't be a remembering so much as a never having read the other person's work. I guess, oh, I was supposed to say Nietzsche. At this point, I don't know what the fuck is his name. He exists, too. Whether, a rose by any other name would still have thorns. So, Nietzsche. I forgot my point. Oh, yeah, sorry. Up until this, all 19 points have been pretty fucking bitter. Like, pretty fucking bitter. He hasn't really been forgiving. The first chapter is Prejudices of Philosophers, and he's been mostly the most prejudiced one. A return and a homecoming to a far-off ancient common household of the soul. Oh, so sweet. Out of which those ideas formerly grew. Philosophizing is so far a kind of atavism of the highest order. Oh, that's egotism. The wonderful family resemblance of all Indian, Greek, and German philosophizing is easily enough explained. In fact, where there is affinity of language owing to the common philosophy of grammar, owing to the unconscious domination and guidance of similar grammatical functions. This feels like egotism in higher learning. Which, in some respect, totally fucking valid. Absolutely fucking valid. I just feel like, I want to call it splitting hairs, but just a means of praising building blocks of understanding, but then making it sound fancier than it is. And also modern day versus Nietzsche's time was difference of education as well, and expectations of education. If you were educated, you would be of a higher stance of learning than those who are even in higher learning today in the US. Was it Watergate? I talk about this a lot, and I am corrected sometimes. But the files that were released to the public that asserted that the US had implemented a scheme by which they would stupefy education over the next 40 years. And so we are here, where I think anybody speaking on education of other languages is classism, because the US shits on education. It cannot but be that everything is prepared at the outset for a similar development and succession of philosophical systems, just as the way seems barred against certain other possibilities of world interpretation. It is highly probable that philosophers within the domain of the Ural-Altaic languages, where the conception of the subject is least developed. That's interesting. Look otherwise into the world, and will be found on paths of thought different from those of the Indo-Germans and Musulmans. The spell of certain grammatical functions is ultimately also the spell of physiological valuations and racial conditions, so much by way of rejecting Locke's superficiality with regard to the origin of ideas. Okay, so I was being an ass, as is granted to those that are born in the US. Ha ha ha. Anyways, philosophy will be absolutely influenced by the culture you are surrounded by, as well as the culture is influenced by the language and what is allotted in speech given the language. So up until the 1990s, I want to say it started in the 90s, Japan didn't have a word for I, watashi wa. Instead, it was just the subject's name, proper name. And then that gives way to today, where you still can introduce yourself instead of watashi wa or any other, wakara, by utilizing your name instead. I don't have a memory of what the fuck my Japanese name was. I only took 2 semesters. But yeah, and then that provides, a different means by which people see you, because I think it's more childlike. It's less normal now to introduce yourself as you would in ancient. I need to stop referring. I was born in the 90s. I have no idea why I keep saying ancient. In earlier Japan. So that would indicate a means by which, or an influence of how people think of things. And that was also arguments made during the 90s when the word was being introduced, is that there would be a shift of consciousness, and it would push people into a more self-centered ideation away from, as well, I think Shintoism is largely praised in Japan. I could be so fucking wrong, but I do believe that they are participants of ancestral based religions, which would influence their philosophy. And so by changing this one word, I, instead of introduction of the self as a titled self, it would also influence philosophy thereafter. And then for an easier example, I was raised non-denominational. Whoopsie daisy. Any denomination is on the table. But I have developed an understanding based on experience, weird experiences. So I do personally, and if you want to argue this in the comments, you are more than welcome. It's a internet, so I expect it. I do believe in incarnations, multiple incarnations, and reincarnations, as is supported by the theory of multiple dimensions and pocket dimensions. And in this, you can see this also affecting the laws. So how people perceive death and life, and therein the laws of not only nature, but just judicial. Sentences are lessened or increased based on whether death is seen as a punishment in and of itself or an introduction into the next happening. And so philosophically, that would also have a significant standing on the laws of life and understanding life, what religion is taught, what belief system is taught, and the takeaway thereafter. But this is speaking specifically on language, so I think the first example is probably the better one. But my bad. So anyways, philosophy will just change based on where the fuck it's coming from, which is why you should study the fuck up, because it's really fucking interesting and fun. Although coming from me, I don't know that I'm making it fun, but I hope this is fun for you. Why are you watching if it's not? Go away. So point 21. The kasasui is the best self-contradiction that has yet been conceived. I cannot be saying this right. Okie dokie. It is CAUSA and then SUI. So kasasui. At first, I thought it was just a weird rendition of Spanish that I hadn't learned, and like my house and how Freud thinks the consciousness. Was it Freud? it's some philosophy that the consciousness is represented mostly in dreamscape as a house, and each room is representative of the compartments by which you have understood consciousness and yourself therein. But I guess I'm wrong. I don't know. I'll have to look that up later. Nikaza sui is the best self-contradiction that has yet been conceived. It is a sort of logical violation and unnaturalness. Now I really need to know what the fuck this is about. But the extravagant pride of man has managed to entangle itself profoundly and frightfully with this very folly, the desire for freedom of will in the superlative metaphysical sense, such as still holds sway, unfortunately, in the minds of the half-educated. Oh, yeah, that's an argument for modern day. What the fuck is half-educated versus full-educated? Bum, bum, bum. The desire to bear the entire and ultimate responsibility for one's actions, oneself. Ah. Wow. You know, it's a good thing that Nietzsche, in his intellect and understanding, existed during his time and not ours. The prominent lack of self-accountability in modern day is striking in contrast to, I guess, what he understood. People wanting to own responsibility for their actions. Hilariously contrasting. And to absolve God, the world, ancestors, chance, and society therefrom involves nothing less than to be precisely this, kaza sui. Okay, so will is also influenced by... I didn't know Nietzsche believed in God. Interesting. Okay, well, if you're going to get into God, and it's capitalized G, and that leads me to believe it is the Christian God, especially in that this is written in English. The Christian God specifically, and that's... I don't remember which book of the Bible it's in. The Fall of the Angels. But the story goes, God created... What was it first? Well, there was darkness. And that's something I have wondered a lot, is who created the darkness? So there was darkness, and then God created light. And then God created the earth, I think, and then the earth was just a vast expanse of water, and then God created land, or no, God created the firmament and the sky, and then God created land, and then from the land, there was animals, I think, was first. No. Man, and then animals, and then angels. And then woman? Or man, woman, animals, and angels? Some order therein. But essentially, God went to the angels and was like, yo, I know I created you, and I know you're bomb, but, you gotta serve man. And that's the hierarchy, is you're going to be subservient to man and man's will and what man does. And that is the fall of quote-unquote Satan. Many names. Went to God and said, I only love you. This creature you created is subpar. It will always fail you. I don't want to be subservient. To which God said, fuck you, and you're gonna be punished for that. And then Satan was like, dope. Satan essentially made a deal with God saying, I bet humans are always going to fuck up against you. And God said, all right. And Satan said, I don't even need to do anything. They're going to do it of their own will. I'll just give them the invitation. I don't need to push them in the direction of, they'll take that invitation and go themselves. And that's when God gave Satan dominion over the earth. And that's when you have Jesus in the desert and God or Satan testing Jesus with like the Bible, the written word, Jesus responding with known morality, I guess. But that is how Satan got there, is because he has dominion over the earth. So Satan is not in hell, and God gave man free will to choose, hey, you want to go in that direction or you want to go in this direction. Ta-da! So absolving God, the Christian God, lets you choose if you want to fuck yourself or not. And therein does not direct man so much as the Christian God, specifically the Christian God that is believed in today. It doesn't necessarily direct man so much as hopes that man will understand God's heart. And that's where you're supposed to have like this relationship with God and be in prayer 24/7. And in prayer is translated to mean in conversation, which is why you're not supposed to do it publicly. It's supposed to be like in your head type of thing. So you wouldn't really need to absolve God of responsibility, as the Christian God absolved itself. The world does have influence over your actions, but you are primarily the person that takes the action or does not take the action. Even if things have influence over you, you are at, the... I don't know the term, but you are beholden onto yourself, And then ancestors, that's an interesting one because, based on ancestral worship, sure, you can be led. But if you were talking about genetic disposition, that then, plays into how you are going to be influenced again. Myself, I believe from my mother's side, I inherited suicidal ideation, and I'm fine. I will not kill myself. I never plan to, and I'm okie dokie. I like life. But there is, if a chemical is felt strongly enough, it can be inherited, or a chemical is lacking enough, it can be inherited, especially if it's happening through multiple generations. But therein, the sentiment stands. I can be influenced, but that doesn't mean that the action follows. That is my decision to make, and I am responsible therein of my actions. Whether I inherited great health or not, I'm still responsible over the actions I take. And then chance. I guess free will. Chance has everything to do with everything outside of you, but you have everything to do with everything inside of you. Inside of you? Chance can also be the influence of the chemicals that the FDA continues to clear in the US, giving us cancer, so. But you can choose how to act when you have it. And society therefrom, everything has influence over you, but you decide the action you take based on that influence. And that's the free will. So you do have free will and you don't have free will because you cannot control others. And I still need to know what causa sui is in order to be able to argue for or against or understand at the very least. So it involves nothing less than to be precisely this causa sui, and with more than Munchausen daring to pull oneself up into existence by the hair out of the slough of nothingness. So modern society also has been enthralled by multiple cases now of Munchausen by proxy. And people take the whole thing and then have understood the mental deficit as Munchausen by proxy, where it is Munchausen purely. And by proxy means that someone has suffered it by being around the individual with the deficit, Munchausen being the deficit. So suffering Munchausen by proxy means you have suffered someone with a mental health issue. And Munchausen, as I understand it, is you cause issues in exterior source from yourself to be able to represent yourself as either better in contrast to the issues you've caused externally, or better than you understand yourself or others understand yourself because you have aided after causing the issues, and that aid is something to benefit your public standing. So Munchausen is slightly narcissistic, if not fully. Having said that, I am not sure I perfectly understand why the fuck it's put here. With more than the need to cause issues externally and therein place yourself as better than those issues, pulling oneself up into existence by the hair out of the slough of nothingness. Does Nietzsche hate humans? This sounds like human hatred, which, I mean, fine. If anyone should find out in this manner the crass stupidity of the celebrated conception of free will, and celebrated, and put it out of his head altogether, I beg of him to carry his enlightenment, which is put into like little tiny quotations, which insinuates that Nietzsche is laughing at that as well. I find funny. A step further, and also put out of his head the contrary of this monstrous conception of free will. I mean, non-free will. It's very forgiving, which is tantamount to a misuse of cause and effect. Misuse. So is he arguing? He's arguing both against free will and against the lack of free will? So he's arguing for non-existence? Not having free will is tantamount to a misuse of cause and effect. But that is prior what you have said. Absolves responsibility from God, the world, the ancestor, transcends society. Which is influence. Which would be the cause, and the effect would be the action you take. I am still confused, as is my normal state. It would appear. One should not wrongly materialize cause. That's interesting. So, things don't come from nothing. Someone doesn't just randomly show up in your life and then urge you to do something of which you then choose whether to do it or not. That is not random, it is pointed. Which, I mean, there's an argument for that. Likewise, I guess CERN would argue, the fucking particle smashing together and causing what people believe to be dimensional rifts would argue against it. That random does exist. Now I have the Christmas commercial of the M&Ms going into the room and Santa, and it does exist. Sorry. Okay, one should not wrongly materialize cause and effect as the natural philosophers do, and whoever like them naturalize in thinking at present, according to the prevailing mechanical doltishness, oh goodness, which makes the cause press and push until it affects its end. One should use cause and effect only as pure conceptions. This feels like split hairs. Forcing an effect versus an effect naturally coming about. And then arguing against the fact that effect could be forced. I think both can exist without one needing to deny the other's existence. I think both can exist. Something can be forced into existence, and that is the effect of force. I don't think that needs to be argued against. And also, conceiving of a cause or conceiving of an effect does not annihilate that either could be forced. And putting it into italics just makes you seem like a fucking asshole. It doesn't imply that you have an original idea that other people just are too unintelligent to perceive of. That is to say, as conventional fictions, for the purpose of designation and mutual understanding. I don't think we're reaching mutual understanding. Boop, boop, boop. Not for explanation. Jesus motherfucking Christ. How do you have mutual understanding if you do not have explanation? I feel like this man is arguing against arguing. How better to get a paycheck than to tell people that they're too stupid and then confuse them into having to agree with you so as not emperor's new robe. I'm not naked. You're just stupid. Although maybe I'm stupid, I don't know. Fuck this shit. Okay, in quote, being in itself, unquote, there's nothing of, quote, casual connection, unquote, of, quote, necessity. Fuck me. In being in itself, there is nothing of casual connection, of necessity, or of psychological non-freedom. Where the fuck are these coming from? These were just newly introduced, not explained. Were these like popular notions of the time, and therein I should just be in the know, and not being in the know means not being in vogue means that I am probably not needing to know what he's talking about? Motherfucking Christ. In being in itself, so in existence, there's nothing of casual connection. Things pointedly exist. Of necessity, there is no need, there is only want, or of psychological non-freedom. Psychological non-freedom. No one is psychologically free? There is nothing of psychological non-freedom. Everyone is psychologically free is what he would wager. Did psych wards exist during his time? I know full fucking well ayahuasca did. You can definitely not be free psychologically. I mean, for fuck's sake, lithium existed during his time. Jesus Christ, man. That's just, your opinion, man. I think he is doing his best. What do you call that? Naive? I don't think. Maybe I just don't think. I think random can exist just as much as pointed can exist, and I think almost they can exist simultaneously. I do, again, think that, there's order in chaos, and that there is chaos in order. So I think casual connection can exist just as much as things being pointed can exist. I would never argue against need, but I do understand that most people have wrongly conceived of wants as needs. So I think that what is understood as a necessity could very well just be a want. And in that regard, it would be easy to argue against a necessity if one has not understood necessity appropriately. And I have just argued against psychological non-freedom. Or that there's nothing of psychological non-freedom in that lithium exists. And I mean, there is something to be said of, maintaining your chemicals when needed. So I do believe that there is a point for certain prescriptions, but I do also understand that these prescriptions can be abused, and in abusing them, you can put yourself into an altered mind state, and in that altered state of mind, lack freedom. Okay, so then he says, in all of that, the effect does not follow the cause. Okay, just because you don't understand how the answer happened doesn't mean that the mathematical equation doesn't exist. A plus B can equal C, but it can also equal C squared. And it could be A plus B with an imaginative number. A plus BI equals D, Just because you don't understand how it got there doesn't mean the way in which it got there doesn't make sense. Their law does not obtain. Laws in quotations. I made my argument against it even if I didn't finish the full sentence. Sorry about probably being confusing in that regard. It is we alone who have devised cause. No, it is physics and science that has understood cause. Fuck this shit. Two. Sequence, reciprocity, relativity, constraint, number, law, freedom, motive, and purpose. Okay. We, the observer, did not create these things. We observed these things and took a note of these things, put word to these things to be able to better understand these things. But these things existed prior to us observing it. If they did not exist prior to us observing it, we would not have been able to observe it. We did not create these things. We are not God. And we are not gods. We are limited creatures. And we should not mistake our intelligence for being higher. That is just the gift granted to humanity, our intelligence of observation. There's a sentiment I hold, and I may or may not be able to speak well on it, but it is that man is animal and confuses itself for God, and thus it exists held in almost third party to its existence. It cannot accept that it is animal because of its intelligence. And when we interpret and intermix the symbol world, symbol world, our means of communication, for fuck's sake, as being in itself with things, we act once more as we have always acted, mythologically. Maybe I'm in agreeing with Nietzsche, and both of us are not communicating in a way that I would understand is one and the same. I don't know. Have I confused myself to coming full circle and just agreeing with him? The non-free will is mythology. The lack of free will is mythology. And free will is also mythology? What is it, Nietzsche? Cover all bases, and therein no one would be able to argue against you because you've said everything and nothing simultaneously. It's infuriating. In real life, it is only a question of strong and weak. Okay, Darwin. It is only a question of strong and weak wills. So you want responsibility over your action, and therein is the need to conquer everything. I don't disagree with the existence of either strong or weak will. I do think that you do need to be able to hold yourself accountable to your own actions. I do, however, believe that things have influence over you, and I do think that things can be forced. You can be put into a state of lacking the ability to take action and having action taken against you. And you can see that in objects as well. So I am put at an odds with his need to conquer everything and therein be responsible for all things. I think this caused a good amount of suffering for his person. And it would be interesting. Okay. I was going to say it would be interesting to note what was happening when he was, writing this societally. 1844 is when he was born. So I presume 1890. Yeah, I would have to know more of the time. And why he puts himself in a position of needing to be absolutely responsible for, all things and in control. That's a lot of pressure. It is almost always a symptom of what is lacking in himself when a thinker in every causal connection and psychological necessity manifests something of compulsion and indigence, obsequiousness, oppression, and non-freedom. I've made the arguments, I stand by the arguments. It is suspicious to have such feelings. Oh, honey. Poor baby. The person betrays himself. What happened to Nietzsche? How lonely was he? And in general, if I have observed correctly, the non-freedom of the will is regarded as a problem from two entirely opposite standpoints, but always in a profoundly personal manner. Some will not give up their responsibility, their belief in themselves, the personal right to their merits, at any price. The vain races belong to this class. So he recognizes that he hasn't had control, and it's probably infuriated him. And this is where the argument of both free will and the lack of free will are perceived as mythology, even if they are not both given that moniker. But he argues against both of them simultaneously. He's just enraged by everything he sees around him, and then also has to have control over himself. Fucking hell. If a blessing can be given through time, may this man be granted peace. Others, on the contrary, do not wish to be answerable for anything. Yeah, he's just mad at the world. Or blamed for anything, and owing to an inward self-contempt, seek to get out of the business, no matter how. That's interesting. He sees people that don't want to hold themselves responsible as hating themselves. That's interesting. That's worth thinking about. The latter, when they write books, are in the habit at present of taking the side of criminals. Ooh. Wow, he would really hate modern day US. How everybody has taken the side of criminals in a lot of these works of fiction, where these works of fiction were initially supposed to make it so you would not want to take the side of the criminal. I almost said Mad Max. I don't think that's right. Dexter. That's wrong as well. I don't actually like these works of fiction, but they are mentioned a lot. Mad Men? Men who are mad? The one where they're all doing cocaine and businessy. You're not supposed to like them, but everybody liked them. And then there's like others, and I forget what they are because I really fucking hate them. Anyways, Nietzsche would hate the US modern day. A sort of socialistic sympathy in their favorite disguise. Or is their favorite disguise. Whoopsie daisy. A sort of socialistic sympathy is their favorite disguise. Getting the community, society at large, to forgive the criminal by finding commonality in the criminal. He would absolutely abhor modern day US. Ooh, cough, cough, the president. And as a matter of fact, the fatalism of the weak-willed embellishes itself surprisingly when it can pose as, oh fuck, another goddamn fucking... in another language that I do not speak and therein cannot fucking pronounce well. When it can pose as la religion de la souffrance humaine. So I'm going to interpret this, maybe horribly, the religion of the suffering, human suffering. He suffers existentialism and hates existentialism. And I would argue Catholicism. Certain sects of Catholicism. That is its good taste. This human suffering is its good taste. Ooh! Nietzsche needs a hug. Someone should give him a hug. If time travelers exist, hug this man. Alright, I'm going to not think for a minute and probably go play Stardew Valley because my brain feels like an overworked computer system. I hope you're doing better than I am. Alright, enjoy yourselves, eat well, sleep hard, drink less than that. Good night. Bye-bye.